How's it going, everybody? In the previous video we discussed the introduction to our VCP series, gave you an idea as to what you can expect, and kind of a very long-winded hey, this is what we're going to be covering, and an introduction to the VMware certification and some of the other details to that. In this video we're going to start getting into some of the technical data and breaking down what exactly it is that VMware does, and how they get it accomplished. Because at the end of the day, if you don't get it, then what's the point? I mean, that's the whole thing with technology. If you don't understand what the technology is there to do, then what's the point of learning it? At least that's my theory. So once I understand what a technology or vendor does and what their product is supposed to accomplish, then I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's check that out. So that's why I decided to go with VMware. Now, this is all applicable to the VCP, Data Center Virtualization, or VCP5 DCV. Now, the first thing we have to talk about when we talk about data center virtualization, before we get started with any fancy topic, is what exactly it is that data center virtualization is trying to accomplish. Now, what data center virtualization is trying to accomplish is trying to take multiple physical operating systems. And you have physical computers, servers, what have you, and they are running an operating system with a bunch of applications running on top of them, or services, depending on the role that the device has in the network. You take that guy, and you want to say you have 5,000 servers in your environment. You have a very large data center. Well, they could be a combination of chassis boxes, rack mount units, what have you, or they could be towers. The idea is you want to take those same boxes that are 15, 20, 25% utilization throughout the day, and you want to start making the most out of your hardware. Well, you would take those boxes and you would want to virtualize them. So take the operating system and the services and roles and capabilities that are running on them, and instead of having the dedicated power, network, CPU, memory per box, you could take and you could glue them together into a single box with a lot more memory, a lot more CPU, a lot more hard drive, a lot more network, and obviously more power, and cooling and management and some other things to go along with that. It gets a little more complicated when you start virtualizing, but you can take all that information and you can bundle it up into a nice little package, and you can put this into what they call a hypervisor. Now, what exactly is a hypervisor? A hypervisor, at the end of the day, simply allows you to take the hardware resources of your physical box, so the memory, so the RAM, the CPU, the hard drive space, and the network capabilities, those resources, and it allows you to divvy them up, or allows you to divvy is just a slang term in the English language, to carve it up in a certain amount of each one of those resources to hand off to a particular guest operating system that will run on top of your hypervisor. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. You have two different types of hypervisors. You have a Type 1 hypervisor. The Type 1 hypervisor is installed like Linux would be, like Mac OS X would be, or Windows would be. They are installed directly to the hard drive. And then you would let it run through its install process, and then when you're all situated, you type in your username and password, and then you would be presented with the desktop, like you are in most computers. Okay, that's what they consider a bare metal installation, or Type 1 hypervisor. Examples again are ESXi, which is what we're going to be working on, Hyper-V, which is a Type 1 hypervisor, but not exactly the same thing as what VMware does it as. I don't believe, I believe it's a role in Server 2012 that you can Virtual Machine Manager and some other things. I haven't played with it a lot, so I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't do it exactly the way VMware does it. And then you have Citrix's Zen server. Never even touched that one, so I have no idea. I just know what some of the major vendors are. And again, I've mentioned OpenStack is another variation of that. So those are bare metal hypervisors. Those guys install, and then you would configure a management network or a management interface on your ESXi box, and then from there you would use the vSphere client to manage that box, and then that's how you would configure everything. So the DCUI, or the direct console user interface, what you would get if you were to log into the box like this. Bring this guy up real quick and click on this guy and go to console. This is the DCUI. So you click in there. This is exactly the same thing you would get if you were to log into the physical box of a computer, or of the host. This is what you would get. That's it. It allows you. It's a menu-driven setup. You'd be able to go in there and manipulate what you want. The initial setup, essentially, you get an address, you give it a web address, a static IP, and then away you would go. That's all you can do from there. Type 2 hypervisor, on the other hand, is VMware Workstation, or VMware Player, or VMware Fusion, or VirtualBox. Those are all Type 2 hypervisors, meaning that it's an application that runs on top of the operating system, like Windows 7 or Windows 8, or OS X, or Linux, or whatever other operating systems are out there that I'm not familiar or not mentioning. And you'd be able to run that, and then you'd be able to run virtual machines inside of that. That is totally okay too. That is a lot of what people use when they are just getting into virtualization. They don't know about ESXi, or they want to just play with ESXi. And there's a quick question: can you run ESXi inside of Workstation? You absolutely can run ESXi inside of Workstation. That is actually how most of the VMware trainers do it. I just don't feel like completely rebuilding my ESXi host with Windows 7 or Server 2008 R2 and doing that. So I just chose to figure out another way how to do it. I went it the hard way. That's just how I roll. So Type 2 hypervisors operate that way. It's just an application that runs on top of the operating system. And then Workstation, and if I pull this up real quick, I can pull up this is VMware Workstation. You are looking at a Type 2 hypervisor. Now, the cool thing about this is once this guy is completely installed and everything, you can actually move this guy to your ESXi host. Now, I was having problems getting the checkpoint stuff installed on my ESXi host, and I couldn't figure out why, and I honestly didn't feel like putting the time and effort into to zero in on the problem. So I said, you know what? It's saved locally to my hard drive that I'm recording on this computer with, and I can just spin it up here. I've got 12 gigs of RAM locally. Let's just take a few and then just install it. Now what I can do is I can take this information now and move it to my ESXi host, down the road, if I so choose to do so. The other thing I can do too is I can actually log in. I can connect to a remote server, and it's open virtual machines on a remote server. Gives me a lot of flexibilities, so I'm going to minimize this screen at the moment. Whoop, too much. That's okay if you guys see that. Now, what we're going to talk about now is some of the details behind the scenes. So, virtualizing the virtualization. And what the heck does that mean? Actually, I brought it up in the introductory video, but I figure I'll cover it here again. Because probably, I'm not even sure if everybody's going to watch that video in its entirety. But what virtualizing the virtualization means is you're going to be taking the software program, ESXi, the hypervisor. You're going to be taking that and you're going to be running it inside of something else and virtualizing it. So Workstation, you can run ESXi in Workstation. You can run, you can do it like I have. I've taken, like in this, I've shown this a couple times already. I am running, I installed ESXi inside of ESXi. And yes, you can do that. It's running 100%. It works great. Matter of fact, you can do that. So those are just some of the capabilities you can use. Now, one of the things that I always recommend is before you go out there and spend a buttload of money on a hardware device to support your virtual environment, make sure that that hardware is compatible in every regard to VMware. And the reason I say that is because I have seen people go out and they just buy whatever. You know, they especially the eBay buyers. They go out on eBay, they buy equipment that is not supported or won't work very well with. I don't think ESXi will not install, but how it functions might be a little squirrely. So the hardware compatibility list is a great place to start to determine whether or not you can do what you need to do. Now, like I mentioned before, if you don't buy the right equipment, you may not get the best experience with VMware. And the HCL, it'll say, okay, what vendor, so IBM, which particular model, so I run a 3650 M2, and what are your minimum hardware requirements, or what are your minimum requirements that you need to run, or what do you have for resources? That's the word I was actually looking for, to run on it. And from there, you're able to go in there and take a look at that. So actually, let's take a look at a VMware's website real quick and take a look at that. Okay, on your screen is the compatibility guide. And the compatibility guide is going to allow you to break things down pretty close to what you're going to be working with. Okay, so it gives you a lot of flexibility. Allows you to take a look at what you're going to need to do. So let's say, for instance, we're going to be running 551 or 555. It's going to be running on a rack mount. All certified memory. We're going to be using. Obviously, we're going to be using not that much memory, but we'll just say for the sake of argument. And then we're going to say the maximum certified memory we're going to be saying is 2 terabytes. And then we're going to say the partner name. I believe IBM is in here. It should be down at the bottom. IBM. And then we're going to say the features that we want to make sure we have available to us are going to say we're going to use fault tolerance. And then we're going to come over here. Our socket is going to be, we have 2 sockets on our box. The maximum cores we're going to say is 4. I forget what I have. 2? We'll say 4. And then the CPU series we're going to be running is Intel. We are running Intel Xeon 5500, I believe, is what I've got. Intel 5560. Intel 5560. And then we're going to be saying, we're going to be looking at Intel, what is it called? It's Xeon, but what is the, just give me a breakdown. If I believe you go to configuration and you go to processor. It doesn't tell me. That's okay. That's okay. So we're going to say Sandy Bridge. That's a name that I'm familiar with. Fault tolerance, compatibility modes. We're going to say Sandy Bridge as well. Now that pretty much gives us everything we need to do, right? That gives us a pretty good idea of the capabilities that we have. Posted data range. We're just going to use it all. So that allows us to take a look at what we're going to be doing. Then we're going to click on Update and View Results. Okay. So we have... Sorry, there were no systems that... Your criteria. That's hilarious. Let's go to Features and go All. Update. Okay, so obviously there's some... let's actually go broadening it out a little bit. Okay, well, let's go to Cisco UCS, which I know they have some stuff in here. Cisco UCS. And we're going to say this is going to be Blade, well, Blade is fine. Typically, Blades are going to have a bunch of chassis in them. And then we're going to be going, let's see here. We're going to go to E3 1200 series. Let's go to V3. And let's update. Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure why this is not working, but the general servers and systems, let's say, okay, compatibility guides. Yeah, this is a good place to go too, because then it gives you an idea of what you can use with it. So for instance here, if you needed to make sure you have CPU compatibility for vMotion, and so you can click on this guy, double click on it, and you can click on this guy, and it's going to tell you what you are compatible with. Here's the guide. So again, if you want to poke around and see exactly what all this stuff equals out to, this is how you would use the compatibility guide. So I'm just going to click on this guy and download it. Alright, so we can click through here and let's see here. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess that's a little different than what I'm. Oh, vMotion info guide. Okay. Well, worst case scenario, call VMware. No, I'm just kidding. It gives you, like I said, it gives you a lot of flexibilities. But at the end of the day, this is what you would need to get done what you want to get done with. So let's view and update results. Yeah, it's weird that it says there's matching your search criteria. Interesting. Let's just go all with everything. See what that says. I'm just curious now. Probably gonna give me a crap ton of results, but that's okay. Because I actually want to get a result. I want to see what it looks like. There we go. That's better. So basically what this is telling us is if we want to run Cisco, there's a lot of different capabilities we can use. So it says supported releases. We can use the C880 M4. Okay, well, I just obviously wasn't putting enough in there. We can do a lot with it and get in there and get a lot going on. This guy's using, okay. Well, apparently my Sandy Bridge was the wrong stuff. So again, you have to be a little more granular with how this stuff sets up. But apparently my server isn't very good. But that's okay. It's older and it does the job it needs to do. Actually, let's come up here and click on IBM. What does IBM allow me to do? IBM, and then go. Okay. These are Blade Center actually, and yeah. So I could go here. Let's click on rack mount one more time, real quick. That's what I actually have is rack. So 3690 are available, and 3650 X. I'm using a 3650. So its number of sockets is 1, and I can support 5.5 on it. So that's a good one right there. So I can do that. If I wanted to expand this, I could. It gives me all the advantages I want to run. So basically, what this is telling me, this is E3. Obviously, if I went farther back to the 5500 series, which is what I'm running, I did update results, I get nothing back. So this is older than the E3 series. So obviously, there's been some advancements. So I just wanted to show you that so you guys get an idea of what you can do and run with it, to get an idea of how that stuff works. Because that's the important piece. If you don't get this stuff, it can be a pain in the butt. So let me pull back up my slides here. Now, the hardware compatibility guide is a great place to start because it gives you an idea of whether you can do it or not. Now, the idea behind this now, one of the things that I just a couple of details here was Windows 7 running Windows XP virtualized. You can download Virtual PC and run XP inside of Windows 7, which is basically doing the same thing as a Type 2 hypervisor. And but you have to enable Intel VTX and AMD V, I believe, is the BIOS, which is hardware-assisted virtualization in the BIOS. So now, before I get any farther, let me break down what we're going to be doing in our lab. Our lab is going to be fairly straightforward. I have an IBM 3650 M2 server. It's a 2U rack mount. With it, it's basically, actually, hold on, I will pull up a picture real quick for you. So this is pretty much what the front end of mine looks like. I've got the two. These are the vertical SAS drives. I think I've got 10. Yeah, this is pretty much exactly what I'm running. That's pretty much it to a T. So I've got two Xeon quad cores, and on eBay I spent about $400 on the box itself, and then I have these first two units right here are the hard drives. I've got the first two in there, and I could add, I think, up to 6 more. I think is exactly how. This is exactly what the front of mine looks like. And then I have two USB drives here, which I connect my mouse and a keyboard into for manipulating it. And if you click on here and go up to this guy, this is exactly what the back end looks like. You have your management address. You have the 2 gigabit E ports. So I have these 2 ports are used, and then I have 2 PCIe slots up here. This one's a 4. This one's a 4, and I connect into these 4 here and 2 over here on 8 and 9. And then I have 2 power supplies if you wanted it to, a video cord, video coming out, and so that's basically, this is identical to what I'm virtualizing. This is the actual server that I have at home right now. So that gives you an idea of what I have going on, and from a physical perspective. So you take that into case. So it's got 64 gigs of RAM and 2 Intel Xeon quad-core processors. It does the job. It doesn't break a sweat, and I paid less than $500 for it. It's old, but it works. It's a workhorse. So that's pretty much where it's at with that. And it stays pretty busy almost all the time. And I've got, what do I have now? 7 network cables plugged into it now, and that just allows me to have the extra VNICs if I need them. So that's what I have going on there. So then I have internally I have 2 servers that are running, which would be equivalent to outside of the actual guest operating system. So I have the one 2008 R2 and one 2012 R2 box. One's for the vCenter, one's for the domain controller. I have OpenFile or OpenSAN for iSCSI and NFS storage. I will be putting in VCSA is already enabled. I've already got it installed. I'm actually going to blow it away and bring it back in. And the reason why I use the VCSA, or the VMware Server Appliance, is because the fact that before I decided to do this entire series, I needed it to enable some compatibility or some advanced features with Viral for hardware-assisted for KVM or keyboard video mouse for KVM support in Viral, as well as adding the virtual serial port in a couple of CSR 1000Vs for my CCIE studies, because there's some stuff that I had to study for a customer that the CSRs that I was running with didn't actually support, which is the newer versions of CSR 1000V support the application experience for doing things like Intelligent WAN or iWAN, and that's why I had to go that way with it. And then we're going to deploy vCenter Operations Manager as an OVF template, and how to get that operating. And then we're going to have one client OS, which is going to be Windows 7 Pro, and we have, I believe I've already put that into the domain, so that will allow us to do things via both the IP and DNS, and I'll show you guys how to set all that type of stuff up. Actually, everything's for the domain is actually operational, so I'm going to have to show you guys how to get another domain operational and how to get that set up. So it's pretty straightforward for the most part, but if you've never done it before, it can be kind of confusing. So I'm not sure if I'm actually going to blow the domain controller away, or if I'm just going to create a new one and go that route. But I'm actually using the 2 domain controllers once they're all situated with the for my Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate certification. I'll be using those 2 domains because they'll already have a domain, and that's pretty much what we're going to be doing. So now that we've gone over that, so you have an idea what a Type 1 hypervisor is, Type 2 hypervisor, and you've checked out the hardware compatibility list, I think now it's time to take a look at VMs in general. And that's actually what we're going to be working with, is entirely virtual machines. And go from there, and then we're going to take a look at getting things situated, get the infrastructure set up, and so that we can start going through stuff. And so we'll get things like what do you call it? OpenFiler setup, VCSA, VCOM, or I call it VCOMs, vCenter Operations Manager, or VCOMs, or however you want to put it. And then we've got pretty much everything else operational. So I'm not going to waste a bunch of time showing you guys how to install stuff, but I will get some things operational so you guys can see how it actually plays out and goes from there. Now, let me break down a couple of things real quick for you as we go through here and get some stuff situated. Actually, you know what? That'll be a great setup for the next video. We do that. So now that I've covered that, I think that's a short and sweet video. Next one I'm going to do is breaking down OVA, OBF templates, and what a virtual machine is, and the files that consist of a virtual machine. And we'll deploy the vCenter Operations Manager, so you guys can see how that would actually get deployed. And it's going to take a little while for that to get uploaded, but it'll give you guys an idea how that works and get that situated. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.